Welcome back. This is episode number 45 of Fundraising Demystified, the show where I interview founders and investors that are actively raising or deploying capital in today's market. I'm your host, Jason Kirby, and I've built and sold multiple companies as a founder, operator, investor, and advisor across multiple industries and business models. And this show is designed to uncover what's actually happening in the current private markets and help founders and investors make better capital strategy decisions. The show is brought to you by my company, Thunder, a tech-enabled investment bank for founders by founders, where we help founders and companies get funded or acquired. Whether it's debt, equity, or the pursuit of an acquisition, our team can help identify what's the best strategy and help get the deal done for you. To learn more about us, be sure to subscribe to our newsletter at join.thunder.vc. Again, join.thunder.vc. Now, if your goal is to sell your company one day, this episode is for you. Today, I'm excited to introduce to you Colby McKenzie, an M&A attorney turned founder who decided to start a cannabis technology business, who raised over $12 million and ran a phenomenal process to sell his company to WeedMaps. We get a masterclass on how to strategically sell your company in this episode. Colby walks us through the key lessons he applied in his company after being involved in over $280 billion in transactions as an attorney at a big law firm. And even talking to Colby brought up a lot of memories of my exit to Walmart and how founders have to really dial in their narrative differently for each potential acquirer when trying to sell a company, and run an incredibly tight process to make sure that you're able to get it across the finish line. You just never know what might be the one thing that causes you to blow up the deal and miss out on a wealth-generating opportunity. Now, as a reminder, to get notified of our weekly newsletter and podcast, be sure to subscribe at join.thunder.vc. Now, onto the show. Welcome back, everyone, to the Fundraising Demystified podcast. Today, we have Colby McKenzie with us today. Welcome to the show, Colby.
Happy to be here, my friend.
No, I'm excited to have you on. You and I have had a couple chats, prior to having you on the podcast. I find your background incredibly interesting, starting in law, going into launching a VC-backed startup, and then coming back to law and investing in startups. I think you have an interesting story that has a lot to our audience that can learn and kind of hear from your background. It'd be great for you just to share a little bit about your story, starting as a lawyer, and kind of what gave you that urge to start a company, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, happy to run you through it. I definitely have what I would say is a bit of a unique journey, but it's given me perspective that I think few have. And I've started as a M&A attorney at Weil Gotshal, for those of you that don't know, big New York-based firm, one of the top in the country, and being at Weil was really unique in that it gave me access to things in my 20s that you typically wouldn't get access to. I'm sitting in boardrooms of multi-billion-dollar companies. Now, granted, that's as the minute taker, but still having access to these types of things was incredible. And then got the opportunity to work on deals like Verizon AOL and the $280+ billion divestiture of GE Capital, like really awesome things to get to soak in your 20s. And that said, I knew all along that I wanted to take a more entrepreneurial journey. So walked in like a crazy person one day and said, this has been great, but I quit. I will stick around as long as I need to keep everybody in good graces, but I'm going out on my own. And everybody kind of looked at me like I was crazy, but I jumped out, started my own boutique equity fund. Like many people that have a small boutique VC fund, I got pulled into actually co-founding a company and ultimately got that to an exit. So I became an exited founder, got my letter jacket and everything. And all of this took place in like a 5.5 year span. So really hard sprint, a lot of learnings along the way. And it was something that I had always wanted to do, and reaching that kind of pinnacle was awesome. And so it was well worth kind of jumping out and building the airplane along the way, so to speak.
Well, kind of having that PEF label, as we call it, the post-exited founder background and opportunity, opens up a lot of doors for you kind of once you've achieved it. But let's take a step back. A lot of our listeners are still in that grind. Maybe they recently left their job similar to how you did it, and they're taking that leap of faith and they're in the current grind, whether it's looking to raise capital. I think you kind of glossed over that whole experience. So let's talk about your experience at Enlightened, the VC backed startup that you built, and share a little bit about what you did at that company, why did you start it, and we'll dive in a little bit more.
Yeah, so quick background on it and funny aside. So Enlightened was in the cannabis space, focused cannabis technology company. And I still go back and catch up with friends at Wild and like, oh, you're the weed guy, which for anybody that knows me is like quite hilarious. That's the title and tag that I have. But I guess when you found a company in cannabis technology, that's the label that you get from kind of the mainstream. But Enlightened's focus was, we were a retail MarTech stack. We had gone in and built kind of a middleware solution where we could aggregate POS data and normalize that and then display it in kind of a clean way. And it helped because cannabis, everything's so small batch. So things are constantly going on and off of menus that you need kind of that real-time menu. And so we would display that on digital menus inside the dispensary using that technology. And we're smart enough to be early into kind of the retail advertising space. And so actually had a unit on those displays where we were running content and advertising, and then ultimately built a more robust MarTech stack on top of that allowed us to aggregate data from inside the dispensaries, know who was in there, and then retarget them outside of the dispensary to kind of close the loop on the ecosystem. So really cool tech. And the interesting thing there is we actually were early. And I think this leads into like why we raised capital. We really wanted to move quickly. We were early in cannabis. We wanted to rapidly seize kind of the opportunity. And as you know, like a land grab is super expensive. So we needed to be venture backed to give us that ammunition to actually capitalize on being early and having the superior tech stack. But as I'm sure you talked with a lot of your clients, like when you take VC money, it comes with strings, right? So the second we took the money, it means, okay, you're going to have to blitz scale and really overweight growth. And it means that you're going to need to build with an exit in mind and kind of within that 5 to 7 year harvest horizon of the venture capital groups. And the second you take the money, those are kind of the strings that come with it. But lucky for us, like I had just come out of my stint as an M&A attorney. So it was easy for me to build to exit everything we did. And the interesting thing is the narrative from day one with our investors was like really granular around what an exit might look like and how we would get to that harvest. And kind of the interesting thing is almost to the day I delivered on an exit that was to a strategic that fit the profile that we talked about 5 years prior and actually did it right at the 5 year mark. So it was pretty awesome to actually have it come to fruition, which is rare with startups to actually have an exit in mind and then 5 years later have it play out like you thought.
Yeah, that is definitely the anomaly, but it sounds like kind of given your experience, seeing so many deals prior to doing your own deal, you kind of had that map in mind. But let's talk about the fundraise and what that experience was like, and kind of give the founders that are listening a little bit of the timeline in terms of what year this company was founded, when you guys exited, just so people can kind of get an idea of what that experience was like, and ultimately how much you raised for the company and over what time period.
Yeah, sure. So fundraising was 100% on me. I bore that weight. My co-founder was a tech savant, an incredible operator. So he was the one that was really kind of leading the charge on that piece of the puzzle. And it was incumbent on me to say, all right, here's the vision, go raise the money. So no pressure. I had to go out there and knock it down. So this would have been late 2016 when we founded the company. It was a time when cannabis was still largely taboo. And so I basically said, I got this, I'll go raise money. I have tons of PE friends and venture capital friends, and I'll just make a few phone calls. And naive as I was as a first-time founder, walk out, every door slams in my face. Nobody's touching cannabis in 2016, 2017. So I had to reset. And I think, tell me if this story doesn't sound familiar. I had to start and just aggregate $25,000, $50,000 checks, anything we could get to keep the engine on and keep the momentum. So it was really just grabbing small checks as fast as possible, aggregating those. And then once we got a little momentum with those, I was able to get deeply into conversations with an emerging fund manager that was launching a fund in the cannabis space. So they got it. There obviously wasn't an issue with it being in the cannabis space. And I courted them over a period of time. And I think this is something that a lot of first-time founders don't think about. It's like, you don't just make a phone call and then they said, wire the money, right? Like, I courted them for months. They got to know me personally. I got 2 trillion diligence questions, including like all kinds of random stuff. We went into the wild to see our product and we're having dinner and talking about how it fits and things like that. And you really go through this like courting, and before you get married, you have to actually feel confident of that. And then once we were able to get that group to join, first significant check, all of a sudden we're feeling good. And it would never happen, right? If we didn't get those first couple of checks, we wouldn't have the product in the wild and none of this would have taken place. So it's all kind of the part of the process. But from there, it became race on. We raised another even larger fund that was focused on cannabis, jumped in and joined. That allowed us to close a little over a $5 million round. And then when it came to our next round, it was all of like 8 seconds. We raised our hand, said, hey, we need 6.5 to get from point A to point B. It was largely internally funded with kind of the funds that were already in. And then we grabbed one extra cannabis-specific VC fund that was a way to, A, get another strategic in the loop, but also, as is super important with a lot of these funds, validate the fund round by having an outsider join. And the beauty of it, and what I always like to joke is like, had we not taken that group, it may have presented a problem, because that last group that we let in actually gave us a nice bridge round while we were in the throes of working through the exit that kind of bolstered the balance sheet and allowed us to not lose any of our leverage. So they came in as advertised, strategic at the finish line to really help us. And so first round, a little over 5 million. Second was a little over 6.5. So across the 2 rounds, approximately $12 million, and what was about a 2.5 year, 5-year total exit horizon.
I'm just so glad I asked that question, because you hit it on the nail. Like, and you're coming from the perspective, like, you have connections. This will be easy. And this is what founder,
Totally.
like
it was so brutal, just doors in the face.
and like, especially in Cannabis-Tech, it's, and everyone's got their, industry they go into, and they're, talking to the wrong people essentially. But you found your crowd, you found your people, you built those relationships. Also, it's like, all right, perfect. You have alignment. They invest in, cannabis, check size, all that kind of stuff. But like, they didn't just come in and write a check. Like, it took months and months of diligence. And
yeah, we're talking probably 6. That first one was probably 6 months of courting them. So it took a significant amount of time to get them in.
While you're grinding, to go out and build the business, while probably chasing and accumulating those smaller checks, with that person knowing that they could probably solve your problem, but they're still like on the sideline,
the
like,
whole time.
Yeah. It's absolutely infuriating.
And I think part of it is like, they want to see you trial by fire, right? Like, prove to me that you can aggregate a couple checks. Prove to me that you can go from the pilot to something that has some momentum. Like, they're just sitting there watching, like, yep, you're doing it. All right, check the next box. Check the next box. Here, okay, here's the money.
Yeah. And especially in these early days, like, there's nothing else for them to go off. You don't have historical financials of up and to the right, for the last 4 years. Like, it's hard to underwrite a deal. So they're ultimately making a bet on you and trusting you. And the easiest way for them to do that is to build a relationship over a period of time. And also, if you don't have 5 other term sheets being thrown at you, this is the game you got to play. And it's a kind of a rite of passage as a founder that every founder hates going through, but it ultimately makes you stronger, faster, better, and drive to successful outcomes. So appreciate you sharing that story.
As a first-time founder, you have to know that's coming, right? Like, second, third-time founders, you probably have traction maybe a little easier. First time, you're taking the hard road. It's steeper, it's bumpier. Like, you just got to grind it out and get through it, because it's always a little more difficult the first time unless you have some outside help.
Well said. And again, like, a lot of people think, oh, like, I didn't grow up with a network, and everyone has it so easy when they have a network. Even if you have a network, it's not easy. It depends on what you're building, the context, your stage, where you're at.
Somebody
Um,
in Texas backwards falling into building a CannTech company. You can do it from scratch. Trust me. I had no ties into that space, no insight, and still was able to pull it off. So if you kind of work hard enough at it, I think anybody can make it happen.
that makes sense. So let's talk about the acquisition. So, you built up Enlightened, you get it to a point, you raise some money, you're grinding away, you get to, the table with WeedMaps, and you get that kind of saving grace bridge round. Let's talk about kind of what that experience was like and how you manage it as an M&A lawyer who had know how those deals get done. How did you approach it?
Yeah, so the experience was really incredible. Honestly, it was my Mona Lisa. I had this ability to say this is a true test of my career and the skills that I've accumulated to date. The ones that I've been touting to get the investors to back us, like time to actually put it out there and prove it. So I was the banker, and then I fully ran an informal auction for us. I was our founder and executive, having to go to all the key strategic meetings with the target kind of leadership. And I was our in-house counsel actually running the transaction behind the scenes. And so at the time here, though, it was my company. So it made it all the more special and made me work all the harder at it. For the listeners, though, to get into a bit more granular and strategic level on it, like we only were looking at strategic acquirers. Our company purposely was built. It was like the perfect tuck in. It would allow the acquirer to get kind of broader access to a bigger marketing play. We had non-cannabis advertisers like DoorDash and FX. Yes, of course, that's who we had in the cannabis space, I guess. And then let these guys get kind of further embedded into the physical retailers. And so with strategic exits, it really becomes more about fit, integration, and the specifics of your company. And so you're painting this narrative of life as part of the acquirer and using kind of products and financials to really back up that narrative. But it's a little different, as you know, than like a financial buyer that's just digging into KPI after KPI. Here it's like, how do you fit with the acquirer? And that's really what matters the most. And that was our focus.
Yeah, the strategic acquisition is ultimately the ideal outcome because there's, in most cases, not always, but like a higher markup on the opportunity because there's strategic value adds, by coming together. So it's not just a markup on your revenue or EBITDA. But when it came to like actually architecting that narrative, because really that's what it comes down to is convincing senior leadership at the potential acquirer of that post acquisition life and how that will drive their outcomes, and what that will ultimately look like and how your team will come in or your tech will come in and solve whatever problems or objectives they're looking for. How do you gain insight to the prospective buyers that you're bringing to the table? So obviously WeedMaps are the one that won the deal, but obviously there's some others. How did you go about identifying what narrative to build and to pitch?
Yeah. So from our perspective, we got to a point and I said, hey, I promised a 5-year exit. I back in, it's 7 months prior to that. And it's like, okay, if we're going to deliver 7 months from now, I need to start that process now, which I think a lot of people mess up on and don't think about it far enough out, right? So we're about 7 months out and I go first and I build a list of like who in cannabis or outside of cannabis would be even interested in buying us, like you said, at that premium due to the kind of synergies. And where I landed was most of the targets were already partners of ours, whether that was somebody that we were integrated with, whether that was somebody that was white labeling a piece of our puzzle. Like I went and said, hey, like a lot of people that are already working with us, that know the team well, are probably best suited to be the buyers. And so what would happen is organically the next time we would have like a catch up with that partner, I'd be like, by the way, like now that everybody else has dropped on the call, would you be interested in buying us? And all of a sudden you start formulating this list of like, all right, they said maybe, they said yes. And once I had kind of that short list of maybe 7 or 8 that raised their hand and said, yeah, this is interesting, I went and found 2 that were outside of cannabis just to make sure from the board's perspective, we had opportunities both in and out and could compare them. And then basically pitted them against each other and said, we have a lot of interest. We plan on exiting in the calendar year, like start making offers. And people started pulling together term sheets and we started comparing them and kind of playing them off each other and had a number of actual like term sheets when it came down to it, and narrowed it to two. And from that point said, hey, this is the one. And it's funny because a lot of people just look at like one factor. Our board was pretty sophisticated, and you kind of have to look at the opportunity and the deal holistically, including what you may gain on the other side of the transaction. And so that was where WeedMaps ended up being a great fit for us.
You're a deal architect. That's all I'm hearing is like how you
It's like,
strategically think about the end in mind and had executed. Of course, we're maybe glossing over maybe some of the ups and downs in the experience, but you drove it to an outcome, and that was ultimately led by you and your vision and what you were taking the company to. So it's impressive just leveraging that lawyer background in the M&A space and being able to truly drive that outcome is a very rare skill, to which most founders, they hire people like you as their lawyer to do this for them, or their banker, or this type of stuff, to get that insight and experience, because it shows that experience pays off substantially. So
totally. And the funny thing, because you touched on it, is we actually, at the time, I would never have admitted this, right? But we had different narratives for all the potential acquirers because our fit had different value, different ones. So it wasn't like we created a cookie cutter SIM and sent it out. It was like every single call, I was explaining stuff in a completely different way to the one I was going to have 2 hours later with a different potential acquirer, because you really have to highlight what your value is on the other side of a deal to that group. And I thought that was something that we did a really good job of, was like really custom, bespoke narratives to each of the target acquirers to help prop up our value in their mind.
Did you sleep at all during that time?
No. And my wife will hold it against me for possibly forever. She said, you disappeared for about 5 months there. And I was, yep, that's about what it took.
Yep. No, similar experience when we sold Liquid Sky to Walmart. It was just an absolute never-ending, relentless grind of maintaining the house of cards, making sure nothing falls apart in the organization so that you don't lose leverage and that you have options, but then creating a narrative for the potential buyers at the table that were completely bespoke, like almost no overlap in terms of what we're going to end up doing. Like underlying technology, yeah, still there, but as far as what comes of it under each acquire, it was a very different narrative. And it's my advice to the founders listening here is, if it sounds like it's going to suck to do it, it's probably the right thing to do. If it sounds like it's going to be an absolute nightmare to manage and to do it the right way, that's you might be on the right track.
And the funny thing is, I somewhat glossed over it, but you touched on it, is like, ta-da, you have a business that you're running at the same time that you're running this process, right? And if the business gets shaky, if it doesn't stay on that rocket ship J-curve trajectory, all of a sudden you may lose the deal. So like, not only do you have to be perfect in the auction or the exit process, but you have to really be on your A game and running the business, because it has to stay on that same trajectory. It's like, oh man, Talk about pressure.
And you can't lie about anything. You can't fake your numbers. You can't tell something that isn't true, because like, you're going to sign all these liability waiver, not so much waivers, but you probably know.
Your reps and warranties, right? They're going to come back on.
Yeah, and you could have everything clawed back if something you said wasn't real, or something you provided was not to what they thought it was going to be. And so there's still a period of like, yeah, you got the check, deal closed, but there's still ways for like clawbacks and escrows and things of that sort that you have to manage it all. It's not something that just some magical fairy comes and says, hey, I want to give you $50 million for your business. And you say, yes, okay, here's your money. Bye. It's a grind for sure.
And the thing that I always tell people is like, in most cases, you're not going to just have a clean break. You're going to be a part of whoever acquires you, right? And what I always tell people is like, do you really want to fudge or make something up or embellish something when 3 weeks from now, you're going to be sitting in the room with these people and have to say, oh yeah, my bad. Like, it's just not a great way to start off your relationship on the other side of a transaction. It's not worth it ever.
Yeah, not at all. I think that's incredibly well said. So, all right, you sell the company. You're now WeedMaps, but you check that box. You're officially a post-exited founder. what's going through your head? And, where does that take you to where you are now?
Yeah, so it's interesting because when you're a founder, for at least most of the founders I know, it gets tricky to go back, right? You're in control, you're the founder, and then all of a sudden you're not. But that's the case with everybody. And funny enough, in a group that you and I are both in, this is like half of the threads are about how to deal with what happens after you sell and you lose some of that control to the buyer and things like that. We all go through it. But from my perspective, WeedMaps was by far the biggest company operationally that I had been at. And so I was just trying to soak it in. I had a 1-year run there. That was kind of the deal. And so I was just trying to spend that 1 year focusing on soaking as much as I could in from like operational expertise and things that I wanted to take away from it. And it was great. Like I really learned a lot and I had value in that year, and ultimately jumped and did another year as a public company C-suite executive, just to kind of round out that piece of what I viewed as my journey and puzzle and kind of gain that skill in full. But at the end of that 2-year sprint, which was here at the start of this year, I sat down and said, that was great. I had this journey, but like, I really wanted to get back to my superpower. And what I viewed as my superpower is the ability to negotiate high stakes negotiations and handle complex, what I'll call complex issues that companies are dealing with. And a lot of times that's in the guise of either fundraising or M&A. And I wanted to get back to that. And the way that I could really unlock my superpower was going back and opening up a law firm, which I grabbed a couple of really talented attorneys that had worked with me along the way. And at the start of the year, launched Transition Point Law. Did so kind of with the entrepreneur spirit and really entrepreneurially focused in mind. And you will appreciate this, having been an exited founder as well. And I'm sure you probably use this, but I sit down with a prospective client and I look them in the eye and say, I have been you. I have been in your shoes. And because I've been in your shoes, I promise you I will understand what you're going through and probably help you through it in a much better way than most. And all of a sudden you start getting these nods and it's like, okay, like this guy gets me. And it creates like this really harmonious relationship that probably wouldn't exist if I hadn't have jumped out and been an operator and actually experienced what that feels like, because it's a lot. Like you're selling your baby, there's a ton of stress and you're going through a lot. And it's a unique situation that I now can provide kind of my own lens into.
Did you know that most founders waste days of their lives chasing the wrong investors? Well, as a founder, you know your time is your most valuable resource. Don't waste it on the investors that aren't going to write you a check. Here at Thunder, we built a free tool that identifies exactly which VCs are worth your time to pursue. We score your company against 3,500 VCs and family offices that have been vetted and are actively writing checks into companies like yours. Get your AI recommended list of investors that will look like this absolutely free by creating a free profile at Thunder.vc. You can upgrade to premium to download this list, export it to any tool you wish, and get their contact information and access the data on their portfolio companies to map out a path to warm intros and build your founder network. Sign up for free at Thunder.vc. Now let's get back to the show.
Yeah, I completely agree, because obviously I'm in a similar boat of exiting a company, and then I jumped around in terms of executive roles and leadership roles, advisor, investor, all these kind of different flavors of different experiences, and then ultimately driving back down to what I felt my superpower was, which was raising the capital, putting together the narrative, the strategy, and ultimately now we're help founders, and we're the investment bank for founders by founders with that kind of similar mindset. And part of the reason why I think you and I hit it off so well, and wanted to bring you on the podcast in terms
I was
of
just going to say that, like, I think our ethos are totally aligned.
Exactly. And I just think there's such a unique perspective that as again, being in their founder's shoes and being able to relate, and still technically we're still founders, still building stuff. We're not resting our laurels. We're not an employee somewhere. And being able to dive into the weeds and get it right off the get-go. I think that's probably one of my favorite things, when founders should be like, oh, I don't have to explain from like point A to point Z in every great detail. Like you can just say A and Z and I can fill the gaps. Like it's just
Yeah.
it's a rewarding experience to be able to have that with other founders that are, and honestly, they're probably the most difficult part of their business, of just navigating a very difficult challenge, whether it be fundraising, legal, transactions, whatever it is. There's always an incredible, what appears to be an unsurmountable challenge as a founder that you go through probably too often. Once you get over one, you're like, all right, yeah, we did it. And then you can't even like celebrate that because you're at it again. Dealing with a whole new
we're
complex
definitely
problem.
Broken in that you don't celebrate, you just get to the next one. But I think you said something that's interesting, and I agree. It's in the DNA, but also I think that there's this language that founders have that you can't really fully appreciate and understand unless you've been a founder. And when people talk, all of a sudden it resonates with different points of your career and you just get it, right? And so we all have kind of this unique language that we're able to speak. And it's in part why you and I have hit it off so well. It's because we're serving founders in new capacities, but we kind of speak that language having been them ourselves.
So let's talk about how you're servicing founders now, and kind of what you're doing at your law firm, and some of the examples of work that you're working on.
Yeah, happy to jump in. I think it marries really nicely with a lot of stuff that you guys are doing at Thunder. And so one capacity is serving as legal counsel on outside funding rounds. Another one is really helping people to prepare to execute M&A, whether that's, hey, I just raised a Series A or Series B and we're about to get aggressive in our corporate development, or hey, we're ready to have an exit ourselves, and really helping people through that process. A third one would be, we have a fractional GC model for venture-backed companies, pretty limited number that we work with, but it's a way to keep me in the fold on day-to-day matters and really let me apply my experience as a tech founder as that in-house capacity. And the last one, and I think this one's probably my favorite, honestly, is just being available and supporting the broader founder community. It's something I'm super passionate about. I had people help me along the way, and kind of the pay it forward, which I know is something that you and I kind of really hit it off on.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great to hear. And I guess, what are some of the common, pitfalls that you're seeing founders make, whether it be clients or some of the investments that you've made? And that's something we haven't talked about, is also, the investments side of what you do. So let's actually maybe let's start there, and then we'll go to the kind of the advice side. Let's talk about kind of what you're doing as an investor, and is it a fund structure? Is it just angel investments? How are you going out and identifying companies to invest in personally?
Yeah, I have two vehicles. One is a holding company, McKenzie Group, that invests into the legal space, which makes sense because that's the ecosystem that I live in now. So whether it's the picks and shovel pieces or firms themselves, we have a holding company that does direct investments into those. And McKenzie Ventures, which I mentioned at the outset, was kind of the boutique VC fund, is still kicking here in year 9. And so I make a number of investments through that, although at this point more have gone indirect through other funds or more strategic, like micro PE plays on that side than the traditional VC. I woke up one day and said, good Lord, my personal portfolio is so overweight venture and seed stuff. I got to cool it. But that's kind of the two pieces there. And I'll tell you a story on one, because you mentioned there, what's one of the things to kind of watch out for. And I think one thing that happens a lot in venture, and I'm curious if you've seen this as well, is somebody will come in and say, I'm strategic. Because I'm strategic, I want a discount, or I want some warrants, or I want something for that. And I feel like a lot of times, particularly with first-time founders, they'll just say, sure, you say you're strategic. Great. I trust you, and you are, which I would caution founders to be so open to just accepting that as true. And I say that because I just am in the process of making an investment and said, hey, I did it. I said, hey, I'm strategic, and because of that, I want X, Y, and Z. And this founder did it exactly right. He said, cool, give me multiple references where you actually did this. I'll call them. And if you are who you say you are, then great, I will honor and give you that value as strategic. And I just started applauding him on the spot. I was like, good for you. Like, nobody actually backs that up and validates it. And this is why I love you as a founder, because you actually say, prove it if you say you're strategic. So that's one thing I think founders should really think about and be cautious about, because it happens a lot. And you probably see it as well, dealing with so many VCs.
I'm so glad you actually bring this up, because one, the validation aspect, like who is this person on the other side? Because, the bad story of my experience on this front is with Liquid Sky, we had pulled in way too many advisors, way too early, all promising the world, to which naive founders, we just expect them to show up and do stuff. They don't do anything because we're not managing them. And they all got fat stacks of equity that we couldn't claw back. We couldn't do anything against. They were just equity grants effectively. And, it's one thing to kind of do reference checks, which of course people in our network were saying like, they're good, you should trust them. But, we were so young and naive, we didn't know how to manage them. So that's the other aspect to it is, if you are going to give up a little bit of something extra to an advisor, like how are you going to manage them? What's the actual plan? And how do you claw it back if they don't perform?
Yeah, keep that stick, right? Make sure you hold something to make sure they stay in active.
Yeah. And it could be, it's hard to kind of like, sometimes people just want a name, like, oh, this guy invested in us, or this guy is an advisor. And like, cool. But when I say that as as an investor, with my VC hat on, I'm like, if that person's not notable in the industry, like a tier 1 name, it doesn't really have much value name dropping them. So you just kind of gave up a little bit of something for not much value if you were only doing the name drop. But if they come in and actually get their hands dirty, you want to make sure they're rewarded and compensated appropriately. But also in the event that maybe you outgrow them, maybe they did their part and time has gone on, having some kind of vesting schedule around it. What is it called? The Founder Institute has the FAST agreement as an option for founders to kind of have like a template. And also, I'll have to see if I have to cut this or not, but I invested in a company that is focusing on solving this problem verbatim in terms of having those checkboxes of like, did you do this? Yes or no? Okay. Yes, you get your equity grant. No, you don't get your equity grant. And to create transparency and, kind of a management experience across that overall, I think is something that, obviously I invest in this company because I see it's such a huge problem, because it's either leaves such a bad taste in the founder's mouth down the road. It's usually, pretty negative outcome, because they just didn't manage that relationship as best they could. So it's good that you brought that up. I think that's a super valuable point that a lot of founders just don't really think far enough ahead. And there's certain tools out there that you can use to mitigate those problems.
And I think you said something that is so true, and that's like, you need different advisors at different points in the journey. Like some you need early stage product and fleshing out. Some you need that one big introduction into your early client base. Like some you need as you scale from an operational perspective, some helping with exits. Like you need different people at different stages. So if you pay somebody and then they just get to hang around as an advisor for the life of the company, it doesn't always, sometimes they're just in the way, right? And it's like, I have 8 people on this advisor call, and it's like, well, 8 of you are here, but I need 3.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing. It's just you set up a structure that allows the relationship to do its part, but also have a cutoff, or have, just think about what that relationship could ultimately lead to, and put check-ins. Don't just put it as like a forever grant, like, oh, here's your equity grant, or here's your option grant, and you're going to get whatever 1% or 0.5% or whatever, and have no actual written agreement or criteria. That was the mistake that I made. We gave away way too much with no strings to pull back or hold them accountable. So it was, everyone's fine, everyone made money, and no one's upset. But it's just like, I kind of wish we handled that a little bit differently.
Totally.
So, going on that topic, what are some other kind of areas in your experience, especially on the the legal side, that you see that is a common problem with founders, or things that founders should be aware of?
Yeah, I'll give you 2. One is, and this is something every time I talk to somebody, I preach: swallow your pride, and you have to get away from measuring success in a funding round solely by your pre-money valuation. Like there's so many more important nuances that matter, I think, as you scale, than giving up a little more dilution early. And one of those being like a liquidation preference. Great, the round was at some big valuation, but if you gave up a massive liquidation preference, like you may end up not making anything, right? And so like thinking about it more holistically than just the valuation number. And I'll tell you, and this is one that I don't often and speak to, but we as founders at Enlightened actually gave up pretty significant equity in the early round of fundraising. But you really need to double down and focus on any place where you cede control, whether that drag along rights, veto powers you give up, or like even something more simple like you're losing control of your time because you have like really onerous or strenuous reporting requirements each month take a ton of your time. Like you just need to think about like anywhere where you're ceding control, because I think that's something that founders often gloss over in a term sheet, but ends up like 2 years later, they're hitting themselves for.
Yeah, and if you don't have that proper legal counsel, and also I'm curious to get your opinion, especially at the later stage, like pre-seed, not so much, seed maybe, but Series A, Series B. I often recommend founders, you have your lawyer for the company, but then, to kind of represent the company. But as a founder, you have now maybe a potential substantial amount of paper wealth. You have certain controls, certain, shareholder rights. It might be good to have a lawyer look over your agreement for you and be solely responsible to you, as opposed to the company, because there might be some points that don't necessarily align equally when it comes to the company and you as a founder, and having personal representation to kind of look after you and your potential outcomes is something that I often will advise founders, especially at a later stage when there is this company's not going under, it's de-risked substantially, and there is wealth generation that will come out of it in most cases. It's something that often I try to kind of poke founders to, like, don't forget about yourself. It's not wrong. It's not wrong to do this. You don't want to be bitter and angry, and when you could have solved that problem in the early days of that round. So yeah, I'm curious.
And in that vein, I think
it's
okay to. I think it's a lot of times it's okay to put that money on the company too. Just like a lot of times an incoming investor will say, hey, X amount of my legal bill is being covered by the company, right? Like if a founder's looking at it in their own capacity, like it's only fair that that's covered by the company as well. So I think a lot of founders kind of will be hesitant there. It's like, I don't want to pay this, but it's like, it may not be a personal expense. You could argue that it's an expense of the company, but especially as more secondaries and more kind of opportunities to take chips off the table in these later rounds, which has become extremely popular over the last handful of years, maybe a little less so in the last 18 months than it was before. But I think that's also a place. It's like if you're taking any chips off the table, you need somebody looking out for you, because those are your chips, not the company's chips.
Yeah. So I just think it's something that, it's a worthwhile investment, whether you pay for it personally or have the company, cover the expenses, which again, you are the leader, you are a sizable part of the company, you are the company in a lot of ways. It's important to have that look and that protection.
And I'll tell you this, I'm a lawyer of practice for many years. Sometimes you're too close to it. I actually got my own attorney for my own deal. Like I was focused on the company stuff. I said, I need somebody that's not so in the weeds, that can look out for me behind me, because I'm just running and gunning. And I had a friend who, funny enough, now is part of Transition Point Law, actually kind of look over my shoulder for me personally in my capacity. So even in my case where I am an attorney, I still did that and used somebody to kind of just look out for my interest personally.
You mentioned that in the weeds part, like, I think one of the reasons why I'm able to have such a high perceived value for a lot of founders, and similar to you as well, it's just like coming from the outside and being able to not have a horse in any race and just be able to kind of see the facts as they are and being able to provide that clarity to founders, I think is something that it's so immensely valuable. And often I'll meet with founders for 20, 30 minutes. I'll kind of read between the lines, cut them off at some point, and just be like, hey, this is what I see, these are the issues that you're running up against, and just quickly get to that conclusion. A lot of founders, they'll just take that and they'll be like, it just pops, a new light bulb pops up, and then they just start running in that direction as fast as possible. It's rewarding to see it, but it's also just a reminder for founders to kind of make sure you're talking to people around you that don't have a horse in the race. And what I mean by that is like, they don't have skin in the game. They don't have, a certain expectation of you or the board. Like, your board is supposed to be there for you, but they all have maybe ulterior motives. Maybe they want you to sell early. Maybe they want you to take a deal with their buddy and not necessarily the best deal for the company. And like,
these types of things can happen. So it's always good to either have a peer network of, fellow entrepreneurs in a similar stage, or like the YPOs and EOs and, different groups out there that exist from forums, or, close, maybe some friends that you can, that get it, like get the founder experience or have been a founder, just to have these kind of conversations. Cause it can help open up your eyes as a founder to certain variables that you just can't do it when you're in the business every single day and you know way too much of how things were and how things are, and not so much how they could be when you kind of get that outside perspective. So I think that's a good tip for founders to take into consideration.
It's super funny that you say that, because one of the things that's becoming increasingly popular for our firm is, and this is in particular with technology first or like development first founders, is we will come in as what I call like a second. So you're the first, you want to be the face of the company, it's your company, you're going to be negotiating this key thing, but we will be there behind you watching, paying attention as like an independent third party, so that when you come to regroup, it's like, hey, you missed this. Have you thought about this? What about that? And it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't think of any of those things. And it's like, yeah, because you're in the throes of negotiating, but to your point, you're also so close to all of this that sometimes it's hard. And it's been a really interesting, I wasn't sure if it'd be something that would catch on as a service, but it's been one of those things that's like immensely valuable. And like it's like, yeah, we only needed you for 10 hours as part of this like key negotiation to be kind of our second, but it ends up being something that changes the trajectory of the company, right? And so it's super interesting. And admittedly, like even when I was a founder, sometimes you're just too close to stuff.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, and something that, for shameless plug purposes, so apologize to the audience, but we got to knock it out here. Colby and I are working on a collab for optimizing, data room, which is legal stuff about your capital raise and going to market, whether it's for M&A or raising capital. There's going to be some other goodies that we're going to come out with, but the link should be down below in the description. But Colby and I have collaborated on a document that helps founders kind of navigate some of the common pitfalls for developing out your data room, what to include, how to manage it, what's the difference between a teaser data room versus a comprehensive data room, and things of that sort. So I just want to do a shameless plug there for us and for founders that are potentially exploring setting up their data room, how to do it, and what they should take into consideration so they don't make common mistakes or get buried with one-off questions or look unprofessional or unpolished to investors. So be sure to check out the show notes down below. There'll be a link for you guys to download that for free. So sorry, just got to throw that out there before we wrap up here, Colby.
No, most definitely. The cool thing is like we both come at it from such a different angle, right? Like it's pretty comprehensive. I have my path that I've gone that's more legal driven. You have your path that's more on the capital raising and making sure this from an investment bank looks like it should. And so I think it's pretty holistic. So I will pile on that shameless plug, my friend.
Shameless plug. Download now. So Colby, it's been an absolute blast having this chat with you. It just feels like just a regular conversation, which has been a lot of fun. Where can people learn more about you and Transition Point Law? Where should our followers and listeners go to connect with you?
Yeah, you bet. I try to stay relatively active on LinkedIn, so feel free to reach out and connect with me there. And then we do a good job of putting up content and things on transitionpointlaw.com, which is the firm's website. So 2 easy spots to keep up with kind of the content we're putting out and me personally.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure to include those in the show notes for everyone to be able to reach out and connect with you. And just it's been great having you on the show. It's been great having this chat, and look forward to getting this episode out to our audience.
Most definitely. Appreciate the time.
Awesome. Thanks for being here with us.
Thanks for listening to the show today. We hope you learned something valuable. And if you did, be sure to let us know in the comments or by hitting that like button. And if you're a founder looking to raise capital, then join us at Thunder.vc. We provide a free tool to help you identify which VC, family offices, or lenders are the best fit for you using our AI. It will save you a ton of time from chasing the wrong investors. And since launching our free tools, founders that have joined our network have gone on to raise over $1 billion in financing. Again, you can find these free tools at Thunder.vc. And as a reminder, We release new episodes every week, so stay informed by subscribing to our newsletter at join.thunder.vc. Again, that's join.thunder.vc. And if you or someone you know has recently raised a round and want to share your story, please email me at jason@thunder.vc. And that's our show. We hope you enjoyed it, and we see you next week.